Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier 3, the trilogy takes place this weekend in the main event of UFC 252, and I can't wait for this fight because it's going to determine so much. First of all, this fight determines the baddest man on the planet, so I'm already interested. The baddest man on the planet will be crowned. That's what the heavyweight championship is. But second of all, and more importantly, the winner of this fight, if it's Stipe Miocic, will undoubtedly become the greatest heavyweight of all time. If Stipe Miocic does beat Daniel Cormier, but if Daniel Cormier beats Stipe Miocic, he is also in the conversation for greatest heavyweight of all time. Now, the reason why it's different for both guys is because Stipe Miocic has the names on his resume at heavyweight that are a little bit more meaningful recently, in Alistair Overeem, in Fabricio Verdum, who in my opinion is a top 5 heavyweight of all time, regardless of what Dan fucking Hardy thinks. He doesn't know the sport whatsoever to put Fabricio Verdum not even on his list. We're going to get over it. We're not even going to talk about Dan Hardy because I will rant for minutes on end about how dumb Dan Hardy is. But still, Stipe Miocic has big wins against current big name heavyweights throughout history as well. I mean, JDS has been around forever, Overeem's been around forever, and Verdum as well. That's like the trifecta of big names that you need on your resume to be considered one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. But DC has beaten also some good heavyweights, but just at a different time. Back then in Strikeforce, I mean, he beat Josh Barnett, he beat Bigfoot Silva. He has good wins at heavyweight, don't get me wrong. He also has a big win over Stipe Miocic. Let's not forget about that one. That one's very important. I just don't think that if DC wins this one, he will be immediately considered the greatest heavyweight of all time because body of work. It just doesn't add up. I know DC has also beaten Derek Lewis, which now looks like a really good win since Derek Lewis pounded the back of Alexei Olenik's head out. We're not going to talk about that one either. Let's talk about the prediction. I don't want to get distracted here. Let's just talk about the prediction of Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier. I think that Stipe Miocic is going to go and beat Daniel Cormier in the 3rd round by TKO. I like the new Stipe that we've seen, although I don't like the fact that he's grown his hair out and put on glasses. I really don't like that because it's a change and I really don't like change. But what I do like is Stipe recently has been a lot leaner and slimmer at heavyweight. And I think against a guy like DC, that works out for him. When he was a slow, ploddy heavyweight the first time, it was a little bit easier for Stipe to get out-timed. DC was just a little bit faster than him in every single situation. DC was catching him on the feet. DC was doing good. I poked him in the first fight, then landed the big KO punch. We'll talk about the eye pokes in a second. Don't you worry. We will be talking about the eye pokes that no one in the MMA world wants to talk about, other than this guy right here, the voice of reason and truth. But DC's a great fighter, but Stipe in the second fight came in a little bit leaner. He looks exactly the same size as he was last time, maybe even a little bit lighter, who knows. Stipe Miocic, as a bit of a leaner guy that's a little bit more light on his feet, I think does way better against Daniel Cormier. We saw that in the second fight. He had a much better gas tank than DC did. And also in the third fight, he's going to be small again. I think he's going to finish DC quicker. I think he's going to finish DC by 3rd round TKO by implementing the adjustments he made in the second fight and picking up right where he left off in this fight here in the trilogy. I think we're going to see Stipe going for the body shots in the 1st round. And if you don't think he's going to go for him in the 1st round, I don't know what fight you think we're going to see here. Stipe Miocic found the golden ticket to beat Daniel Cormier. Body shots. Because what was DC doing throughout the entire fight in this fight with Stipe Miocic? Reaching forward, grabbing the hands, eye poking, also reaching forward. We'll talk about the eye pokes, don't you worry. Punching, straight punches, keeping his hands up the whole time. The body shots were the answer. And I don't think that DC is going to be able to adjust an entirely new game plan here, other than maybe going for a bit more of a wrestling heavy approach. But we'll talk about that as well, because DC tried to wrestle Stipe. The reason why he was striking with Stipe is because he couldn't get Stipe down anymore. Wrestlers don't like not being able to get guys down because it's such a heavy waste of energy. There's so much energy goes into making a shot of a takedown, and it's just debilitating to not get that takedown after you've worked so hard for the shot. Stipe Miocic in the first fight took down Daniel Cormier and beat him in the clinch as well. DC tried to grapple with him. In the second fight, DC grappled him in the 1st round, got the takedown, didn't really do too much with it, and Stipe got back up. In the 2nd round, DC went for a takedown again. Couldn't get it. Stipe went for a takedown. Took down Daniel Cormier. And won in the clinch as well. In the 3rd round, DC tried again. Or no, after Stipe tried to take DC down again, DC tried to take Stipe down. couldn't do it, and Stipe landed a knee to the face of Daniel Cormier afterwards. I don't understand the predictions made by people who think Daniel Cormier is going to win. I understand that you can make a prediction. It's very likely that Daniel Cormier could win this fight. I think it's about a 60-40 chance that Stipe wins this one. But still, Daniel Cormier, you may predict him to win. I understand. People saying that he didn't wrestle. He did wrestle. He couldn't do it. And he got out-wrestled in certain situations. That's why he resorted to staying on the feet with Stipe in that later round. I don't know why people keep saying this, like DC fumbled the win. No, he didn't. He just got figured out. DC took him lightly. DC wasn't being serious. Well, no, calm down. DC's going to take it serious in the trilogy. No. Why would he ever not take it seriously in the rematch? I just don't understand the rhetoric coming from Daniel Cormier's team of predictors that are out there right now. I don't see the same DC anymore. The DC that I saw in the heavyweight fight with Stipe last time in their rematch, I felt like I saw him age in the middle of the fight. Now, you could just say he's getting more and more tired, but I saw a little bit less of the sting on those punches. He was being real obnoxious with it, like the way he was throwing the punches. I think he's going to get cracked again and finished earlier, and Stipe's going to go to the body shot straight away. People talk about, Stipe only won because he made the adjustment in the second round. He doesn't need to make the adjustment again. He's already made the adjustment. He knows the recipe to win. And in a fight when everything is on the line for DC, in an arena with no fans as well, you will resort to what you do best. Okay, that tends to happen a lot with MMA fighters. You can teach them whatever game plan you want. Under higher amounts of pressure, they will do what they normally do. And we saw that. Look, Daniel Cormier said it to John Jones. You're not going to knock me out with your left kick to my head. What happened in the fight after a few rounds of tough fighting between Daniel Cormier and John Jones? DC returned to what he does normally and opened himself up for the head kick, because every single time someone throws a head kick, DC leans over like this because he's expecting it to come to the body. And that's exactly what happened. John Jones still caught him with the head kick because when DC gets under a little bit of tough fighting, he does what he normally does. These are tendencies that DC has in his career. I don't think he's going to be able to go out there and stop the body shots of Stipe. And I think with them starting so early, it's going to start to drain the cardio of DC even more. And I think Stipe gets it done. Listen, in a time like this where training is so difficult, I favour a guy who's naturally in better shape as well. That's another factor I'm going to bring into this prediction, because right now we've seen a lot of guys not show up in shape. Not show up with the best cardio in the world. It seems to be happening every single card. There's one or two guys that just aren't in the same level of shape as they usually were. DC is an old guy with a family trying to figure out this whole training situation while the lockdown is on. Naturally out of shape. I feel like the person who's naturally better in shape and more athletic in Stipe Miocic is going to have a favour naturally in the cardio here. And I definitely think that Stipe's been training hard as well, because as much as people say that Stipe hasn't really been training hard, this is for his legacy. He's trained as hard as possible. Let's be real. I don't think Stipe's out there taking time off, growing out his hair, just drinking on the beach every day. I don't know if there's a beach in Ohio, but still. Anyway, I think Stipe's going to go out there and win by third round TKO. I also know that the referee has been warned by Stipe, and the conversation has been brought up about Stipe talking to the referee about the eye pokes. People deny their existence. DC went for eye pokes non-stop in their rematch. Non-stop going for eye pokes. In the first fight, he eye poked Stipe in Stipe's left eye. Stipe gets KO'd. How? By not seeing a shot coming close range on his left-hand side. The eye poke literally led to the finish of the fight the first time. In the rematch, DC's tried poking him in the eye again, landed a couple thumbs in the eye as well for good measure, and he was going for it throughout the fight. I feel like this time, knowing the history of these two bouts, the referee, I'm assuming he's unbiased here, even though everyone that works for the UFC seems to just absolutely fucking rim job DC at any opportunity they get. But still, I feel like the judge or the referee is going to be very unbiased. We're going to see the eye pokes. We're definitely going to call them out earlier this time, referee. That's going to happen. There's going to be a bit more quickness with the eye poke taking away points. I believe also Mark Goddard is refereeing this fight, which I don't mind, even though he's kind of biased because he was biased against Colby Covington in his refereeing. You can't do that as a referee, but still, Mark Goddard is a guy who takes points away very quickly for those kind of fouls. Mark Goddard is a guy we've seen take 2 points away from guys for constant groin shots. 2 points. He does not care. He will take away points. And I feel like that's a real big factor here because DC cannot get off his most effective technique in both of the fights that they've already had, which was the eye gouges. That was his most effective technique. And I think Stipe's going to beat him this time. And he's going to beat him way better than he did before. I think DC's going to have success in the first round. After the first round and a couple body shots and a couple failed takedown attempts as well while we're at it, I think Stipe's going to get him. I think he's going to start going after him towards the half of the second round, the second half of the second round. Then in the third round, he's going to pick it up and finish him in pretty much the same way. Body shots, go upstairs afterwards, finish DC in the third round. It sucks for me to say that because DC is he's a nice guy. He's a great fighter. It really wouldn't be nice to see DC go out on the end of his career with a loss to Stipe Miocic, not being the greatest heavyweight in the UFC at the moment. It would be upsetting. But I think Stipe wins anyway. I really do. I think Stipe goes out there and gets it done. I like Stipe's style. I think he gets it done. Even in the first fight, the adjustments were all made by Stipe. I've noticed this in the fights. I've watched both of them again. DC was DC. Stipe was this guy, then that guy, then this guy, then that guy, then this guy, whenever he needed to be. He made the adjustment with the uppercuts. People forget about the uppercuts that he was landing on DC. He noticed that DC was reaching with his arms out, coming in against the cage. Stipe kept sliding up an uppercut. He's making the adjustments. DC made no adjustments. Either DC comes out and makes a bunch of them this time. I'm not willing to bet on that because some guys get set in their ways, and I feel like DC is kind of that. He's got his style. He's not going to come out there this time and look completely different. He's going to try and do the same thing because that's what he kind of has to do to beat Stipe. Land on the feet, push him backwards, get him against the cage, and try and take him down. Tried that last time, couldn't do it. And that's the best way he's got to beat Stipe. Now, there is a smaller cage, don't get me wrong, but I will say this. I don't think it matters too much. I really don't, because Stipe's just got less time to walk backwards. It didn't seem like DC was at any moment trapping Stipe against the cage. One thing that's underrated about Stipe Miocic, and one thing that he showed against JDS does not get off the cage quick enough, and Stipe made him pay in that fight. Stipe gets off the cage so quickly. As soon as his back hits the cage, we saw this in the rematch between him and DC as well. As soon as his back hits the cage, he's off. He's off to the side. We saw it in the fourth round even, when they're both tired. Stipe is still moving well and acknowledging that he needs to get his back off the cage. I think that's going to be something that he carries over into this fight. It's going to make the fight a little bit more higher paced, and with the body shots involved and a higher pace involved, I don't see DC KOing Stipe unless he lands the perfect eye poke, which he will be going for. Watch out for it. I don't think he KOs Stipe, and I don't think he makes it to a decision without Stipe putting it on him. So I'm going to pick Stipe to win by third round TKO. Like and subscribe. And if Stipe does win this one, listen, I reckon he retires. He's got nothing else to prove. What's he going to do? Rematch Ngannou and risk that on his legacy? There's no way he does that. There's just no way. He's not going to rematch Ngannou. I just don't see it happening. So if Stipe wins, I reckon he retires as well. And I think that's probably what's going to happen. Stipe wins, retires. Then we get Ngannou versus Jones for the vacant heavyweight title to try and lure one of them back from retirement. Who knows? Jones ain't going to heavyweight. Never mind. What am I saying? Of course he isn't going to fucking heavyweight. He never will. He's been trying to go to heavyweight for decades. He's not going. I need to get that in my head. He's not going to heavyweight. Click that button now. Goodbye. Thank you for watching. Stipe Miocic wins by third round TKO. See you later.